So with any relief carving, we're going to want to drop the background down so that we can see the design as it's raised off the surface. To do that, I've got a large carbide. My scale says right here, number 10. I've got a fly flying around. You see that? Crazy. All right, a number 10 carbide right there, and it is fairly small, but it is going to help us remove the background a little bit. We're going to go right along the outside edge. We're going to drop it down. Now, I'll drop it down to any depth you want. If you want to go more, you want to go less, it's really up to you. I'm going to go down the thickness of the head. All right, so I'm going to drop it down so that right along the trough, I'm going to run a trough right around it. That's as deep as the head itself. And then we'll go on to the next step. I want to run a trough, and you'll see that as we go. And then through subsequent steps, we'll remove all the background, get it down to the level we want, and start working on the flower itself.
As we begin dropping the trough down, this is establishing roughly the depth that we want to go with the background throughout the entire background. I'm going down about the thickness of that number 10 carbide, and I'm just wiping back and forth in order to establish that depth. Now, the important thing here is to let the handpiece do what it has to do. Do not force it. Again, if you push so hard and you grind that handpiece to a stop, if that burr stops moving, if it stops turning, you are being too aggressive with that handpiece, and every time that burr stops in the wood, you are stressing the turbine. In order to keep the turbine healthy, in order to keep it moving along easily and smoothly, do not force it. Take your time. Let the tool do its work. Now, I'm speeding up the video right here, but it is not a great deal of time. We're talking less than 10 minutes to go around this carving. I think it really only takes about 5 to 10 minutes to do this, and that's without being overly aggressive with this handpiece. So take your time, let the handpiece do its thing. Now, I'm taking material away on the stroke towards me and the stroke away from me, and I'm just wiping back and forth, going into that initial depth trough that we established with the pointed carbide. Now I'm just removing that a little bit to help build out the depth that I want to go and remove everything. So just wipe it back and forth, nice and easy, and you'll get the job done without much hassle. In any areas that you want to bring out so it's easier to get the larger hand pieces in, the larger tools into that to help remove the background, go ahead and do it this time.
Okay, so now that we have the trough run around it, and we got everything ready to go, all right? Next thing I want to do is go in and straighten up this edge. This edge had the first straight bit go down through there, but then I took that ball and went in and ran around that edge, and now it's a little rough, all right, at least for my preference. So what I want to do now is I put in a straight carbide. It's a little thicker. It's not tapered like the fine point. The fine point carbide bit burr goes into a taper, into a point. Now this carbide is straight, comes down, and it's got a flat bottom on it. There are carbides that have a round end to them, but this one is just flat. I want a nice flat surface, one, to establish the depth that I'm going to carve, and two, that straight edge on the side will help me to determine that edge being straight up and down as close to as I can for the rest of the carving. It's a nice starting point for me. I like doing it this way because that way I can determine exactly what's going on. Make it nice straight up and down. Again, with this, just like with the fine point, we're going to go straight in, and we're going to just write it along the edge that we've done, and work it to the depth. I'm going to go clear down to the base of the flutes on this carbide bit, which is a full 1/8 of an inch, and that way it kind of gives me a rough depth, okay, for this, and the nice straight edge on the thing can straighten up the whole edge of the design.
So as we begin cleaning up this edge, it's important to remember, once again, I'm going to say this throughout the entire carving process, do not be aggressive with the handpiece. Doing this cut will be fairly easy. There is not an awful lot of wood that is being removed. We're just running the carbide, the straight carbide, along the edge of the design, and what it is doing is straightening up that edge. We had the first pointed carbide that went in and gave us an initial trough. We came in after that with a round carbide, again a different shape, which brought it down and gave us that more of initial depth that we wanted, but it's not perfect. Now with this, I prefer to go around the entire design and straighten this edge up because it makes it easier for me to see exactly what's going on. And when I drop the levels down of each individual petal and the leaves and everything else in the design, I can see exactly where the depth is. Now this tool also helps me to establish that 1/8 inch deep background that I want for this relief carving. I plunge this bit all the way down to the base of the cutting head, and that gives me, by measurement, about 1/8 of an inch. This gives me a good line to follow in the coming steps to drop the rest of the background down to that level, and I can be fairly precise with the knowledge that I am getting it to the depth that I want to be. This makes it a lot easier for me to see the entire design, where it's going, and what it is I want to do with it. Now, if you don't want to do this, and you can see the design well enough without it, you don't have to do this, but it makes it easier to establish that final detail because you don't have to come back in switching back and forth between tools to get the look that you want. This cleans it up, straightens it up, and then you know you've got what you need going into the next steps so that you can come out with the best quality finished carving that you could possibly make. There are times when you may want to skip this step, but most of the time, in all of my carvings, I keep this step in. I feel it's very important in order to get that professional level of carving that I'm after.
So there you have it. Nothing super amazing with this little bit right here. What I just done is just clean up the edge, made it nice and straight. You can see the double trough right there. That double trough is what we're looking for. Just gives me a final depth. And now I'm ready to go in and remove the background. Now there's lots of ways you can do this. All right, if you have a router, you could go in and establish the outline. If you have a fine point router, like say you got an 1/8 inch straight shank type router or something like that, just a really fine router, you could just put this in, go right around the edge, knock out the rest of the background, you're done. Okay, but not everybody has a router. Not everybody has a bandsaw. Not everybody has all the fancy tools and equipment. So this is a way for someone that has an air compressor, the equipment, dust collection, you know, safety features, the very, very basics, okay, you can get the job done. And this is how to do it, okay? So now we're ready to remove the background. What I'm going to do is switch over to a Dimond wheel. Let me grab one of these here for you. There we go. A Dimond wheel, okay? And we're going to use the Dimond wheel to go in here and help remove some of this excess wood. Now on a project this big, normally I would take it, either use a router or I would switch over to a larger carving handpiece and switch over to using like a large diameter carbide that would just really hog off this material And something like this would work really well, just to get down to it, either with a round, if I'm in the middle of something, or maybe switch over to a cylinder. Okay, any of these two things here would work to help remove this waste material to drop the background close to where we want it. The key here is just to waste it away, get rid of it, do what you got to do. Now, because not everybody has the same tools and equipment, I want to make it as accessible as possible for everybody to be able to do this with the least amount of tools. So I'm going to show removing the background with Dimond Carbide. I might switch over back over to that round carbide, that large round carbide, the number 10, to help with the process a little bit. Okay, now Dimond wheels come in several different sizes. Here's two. All right, so there's several different sizes. They get into tighter places or larger places depending on what you need. All right, so I have a selection of two sizes right here, a small one and a large one, and I'll use the large one for most of this.
Now, when it comes to removing the background, just like I've said before, you can remove the background however you want to, whether it's with a router like this way with the wheel. It's totally up to you how you remove the background. The only thing here is to get the background removed. And you want to be pretty level and consistent with it. And that's with the double trough there, with that second line that we just came around and cleaned up the edge of the design. Makes it very efficient to see basically where I want to go. Now, it's not going to be perfect, but hey, it's a background, and it looks good. When we're done, you'll see that it looks just fine, and you can't tell that it's wavy. If you need to be as exact as possible, definitely pull out a router, pull out something where you got a consistent depth set for it, and do it that way. There are attachments to these hand pieces that kind of help you set a depth to the burr, all right? But that's not really important as far as what we're doing here. The best thing to do is just do the best you can, as long as you keep the wheel perpendicular to the carving surface and work at it. It will come out pretty level. And any areas that are not perfect, you can take a gauge, measure it off, come back and work it and refine it if you need to. If you're working on a curved surface, such as a gun stock or something else, it's not going to matter as much. All right, you're not going to have to get it as perfect as you want. Besides, the background is not going to be one-dimensional in some cases. You're going to have other elements as part of your design. So it's not as necessary to worry about it, okay? The thing here, work on just getting it level. I'm using the large wheel here to remove as much material as possible to get it down, and you don't have to attack it flat. You know, there's other ways you can do it, just like this. Turn it on its side. You know, whatever you got to do to get it done, that's what you do. That's what you do. Another thing to consider is dust collection. I have my dust collection running right now, but there's a lot of dust that gets kicked up into the handpiece and into my hand itself and doesn't get sucked up into the dust collection system. So wearing a dust mask, especially this, where I'm only 2 feet away from this material, I don't want to be breathing in those particles. I don't want that in my lungs. My lungs are great, but I don't want to use them as a dust collector. So make sure that you have good dust collection. Wear a mask, especially on things like this where it is quite messy. Keep it clean, keep your lungs healthy, keep your body healthy, because the important thing here is to have fun. We want to enjoy the carving process and not get sick from it. At this point, I've done as much as I can do with the larger wheel, so I'm going to switch over to the smaller Dimond wheel just to get a little bit closer, get farther up into the design. There's only so far I can go with this, but it helps just to get close. When we do the actual background stippling later on, we can level it out with a ball and get up in there and make sure it's as flat as we need it in order to remove the background. But here it's just to get a little tighter, just a little bit of extra cleanup. Makes it nice, easier to work with.